Today, we're going to talk about something that almost everyone is curious about, but very few people actually get accurate information on: how long sex really lasts in the real world. Not what movies show you, not what social media exaggerates, and not what people brag about, but actual data collected from real couples across different countries. Because if we're being honest, modern culture has created a very distorted image of sex. There's this constant pressure that it should last a long time, look a certain way, and meet some unrealistic standard. And over time, that pressure can quietly affect confidence, performance, and even relationships. A lot of people walk around thinking they're not normal simply because they're comparing themselves to unrealistic expectations. So let's bring this back to reality using actual research. Before we even get into numbers, it's important to understand how sex was defined in the study. In this case, researchers focused specifically on penetrative intercourse. That means the timing started at the moment of penetration and ended at ejaculation. It did not include foreplay, emotional connection, or any other form of intimacy. And that's a key detail because in real life, sex is much more than just that one segment. Still, for the purpose of measuring something consistently, that's the definition they used, and it gives us a baseline to understand what's typical. Now here's where things get interesting. When men were asked what they believe is the ideal duration of intercourse, the average answer came out to around 15 to 16 minutes. That's what many men think they should be able to last. When asked what they believe actually happens in reality, their estimate dropped to around 8 to 9 minutes. But estimates and perceptions don't always match real data, so researchers took a more objective approach. They asked around 500 couples from different parts of the world to actually time their intercourse using a stopwatch. Not guess, not estimate, measure it in real time. The results were eye-opening. The average duration came out to approximately 5.7 minutes. That's it, just under 6 minutes on average. Now, there was a wide range. Some encounters lasted less than a minute, while others extended close to an hour. But those were outliers. When everything was averaged out, the number consistently landed around that 5 to 6 minute mark. And even more interesting, this varied depending on location. Some countries had shorter averages, closer to 4 minutes, while others had longer averages, closer to 10 minutes. So even culturally, there's no single standard, just a range of what's typical. When you hear that number for the first time, it can be surprising because it's so different from what most people expect. Many people assume that lasting longer is always better, or that there's some universal benchmark they're supposed to hit. But the reality is, most people are already within the normal range. They just don't realize it. Now, another layer to this conversation is what partners actually want. And this is where things become even more complex. Some surveys suggest that women may prefer longer durations, sometimes around 20 to 25 minutes of penetrative intercourse, but these numbers are highly variable and not based on the same kind of controlled scientific measurement. More importantly, preference is not the same as requirement. What someone ideally imagines and what actually feels satisfying in a real relationship can be very different. This is where communication becomes far more important than numbers, because satisfaction doesn't come from hitting a specific time target. It comes from understanding your partner, being present, and creating a connection that goes beyond just physical timing. For some couples, shorter durations are perfectly fulfilling. For others, longer sessions may feel better. There is no universal rule. What really matters is whether both people feel satisfied, connected, and comfortable. Another important point to understand is that focusing too much on duration can actually make things worse. When someone becomes overly focused on lasting longer, it can create anxiety. That anxiety can interfere with natural arousal, lead to performance issues, and take away from the experience entirely. Instead of being present, the mind becomes occupied with timing, control, and pressure, and that's the opposite of what leads to a healthy sexual experience. If there are genuine concerns, such as ejaculating much sooner than desired on a regular basis, or taking an unusually long time to reach ejaculation, those are valid medical topics. Conditions like premature ejaculation or delayed ejaculation are real, and they can be addressed with proper guidance. In those cases, speaking to a qualified professional, such as a urologist or a trained therapist, can be very helpful. There are evidence-based approaches that can improve control, reduce anxiety, and enhance overall satisfaction. But for the majority of people, the issue isn't a medical condition. It's simply a mismatch between expectation and reality. And once you understand what's actually normal, a lot of that pressure begins to fade. It's also worth remembering that intimacy is not limited to penetration. Foreplay, emotional connection, communication, and mutual understanding all play a major role in satisfaction. In fact, for many people, those elements are even more important than the duration of intercourse itself. When you shift the focus away from how long and toward how it feels, the entire experience changes. Couples who communicate openly tend to have more satisfying relationships, regardless of how long intercourse lasts. They understand each other's preferences, they adjust, they explore, and they remove the pressure of trying to meet unrealistic standards. At the end of the day, numbers can give us context, but they don't define your experience. If you're within that average range, you're already normal. If you're outside of it, that doesn't automatically mean something is wrong. What matters most is how you and your partner feel about it. So instead of comparing yourself to exaggerated expectations or worrying about hitting a specific time goal, focus on connection, comfort, and communication. Because real satisfaction doesn't come from a stopwatch. It comes from understanding, confidence, and being fully present in the moment. And sometimes just knowing the truth about what's normal is enough to take a huge weight off your shoulders.